Imagine the cup of coffee resting on your kitchen counter right now, the one you have likely been drinking for years. It might be quietly supporting your blood sugar stability, or it could just as easily be contributing to rising glucose levels and increasing diabetes risk. Not through supplements, not through medication, not through rare health foods, simply through coffee itself. For people over the age of 60, coffee is not the real issue. It has never been. The real difference comes from timing, preparation, and what is added into it. The information being shared here is based on scientific findings from major medical research centers that have examined how coffee interacts with blood sugar control, especially in older adults. These results are significant, yet often misunderstood or overlooked. The focus here is simple: identifying everyday coffee habits that may be causing blood sugar spikes without notice, and understanding how to adjust them in a practical way that supports metabolic health. With aging, the body changes in ways that directly affect glucose regulation. Muscle mass naturally declines over time. Since muscle tissue is one of the main sites where glucose is absorbed from the bloodstream, reduced muscle means less capacity to clear sugar after eating. At the same time, the pancreatic beta cells that produce insulin gradually lose efficiency. Their response becomes slower, allowing glucose to remain in circulation longer than it should. According to data from the American Diabetes Association, adults above the age of 65 represent the fastest expanding group receiving new diabetes diagnoses. 1 in 4 individuals in this age range is living with some form of diabetes. In addition, about half of older adults are estimated to have prediabetes, meaning blood sugar levels are already elevated beyond normal but have not yet reached a clinical diagnosis. In most cases, there are no obvious warning signs at the beginning. Instead, changes appear gradually. Slight fatigue becomes more common. Thirst increases a little. Mental clarity may feel reduced after meals. Over time, these subtle shifts accumulate quietly. Coffee becomes important in this context because it interacts directly with these age-related metabolic changes. Certain natural compounds in coffee may help support insulin response, improve glucose uptake in muscle tissue, and slow down carbohydrate absorption from food. However, these effects only appear under the right conditions. If coffee is consumed with added sugar, taken on an empty stomach, or used at inappropriate times during the day, those benefits can be reduced or even reversed, potentially worsening blood sugar control instead of improving it. To understand this better, it helps to look at the key compounds involved. 2 of the most important substances in coffee are chlorogenic acid and trigonelline. Chlorogenic acid acts in the digestive system by slowing the breakdown of carbohydrates. When food such as bread, rice, or fruit is eaten, it is normally converted quickly into glucose and absorbed into the bloodstream, creating sharp increases in blood sugar. Chlorogenic acid slows this process by limiting the activity of the enzyme alpha-glucosidase, which is responsible for breaking down complex carbohydrates into simple sugars. With this enzyme slowed, glucose enters the bloodstream more gradually, making it easier for the body to manage. A major scientific review published in the journal Food and Function examined 28 clinical studies and found that chlorogenic acid from coffee consistently reduced post-meal blood sugar spikes and improved insulin sensitivity. The strongest effects were observed in individuals with impaired glucose regulation, particularly older adults with pre-diabetes or early-stage diabetes. The second key compound, trigonelline, plays a different role. Research shows that it may activate receptors in the liver that improve how glucose is processed and cleared from the blood. The liver acts as a storage and release center for glucose, either producing it or absorbing it depending on the body's needs. Trigonelline encourages the liver to take in excess glucose rather than release more into circulation. A study published in 2022 in the European Journal of Nutrition found that trigonelline supplementation significantly improved fasting blood glucose levels in people with metabolic syndrome, a condition commonly seen in older adults. An important point often missed is that decaffeinated coffee contains similar levels of chlorogenic acid and trigonelline as regular coffee. This means the blood sugar benefits are not dependent on caffeine. They come primarily from these other compounds. Caffeine can influence metabolism, but it is not the main factor behind these effects. One patient example illustrates how these factors come together in real life. A 74-year-old retired engineer, physically active and mentally sharp, was struggling with unexplained blood sugar readings. Despite regular walking, reducing refined carbohydrates like bread, and following what he believed was a healthy routine, his fasting glucose remained at 142. His 3-month average blood sugar level, known as A1C, had risen to 7.3%. He had also been consuming around 3 cups of coffee daily, believing it supported his health. Yet his numbers continued to worsen. After reviewing his daily routine closely, several patterns became clear that were interfering with his blood sugar control. One major issue was drinking coffee immediately after waking up, before eating anything. This is a common habit, but it interacts with natural hormonal changes that occur in the early morning. Between approximately 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., the body goes through a normal process known as the dawn phenomenon. During this time, the adrenal glands release cortisol, a hormone that helps wake the body up. At the same time, the liver releases stored glucose into the bloodstream to provide energy for the start of the day. As a result, blood sugar is already elevated in the morning hours, even without food intake. This process is a normal biological function. Is this conversation helpful so far? Now, what happens when caffeine enters the system is that it activates the same adrenal glands and strengthens the cortisol reaction. This signals the liver to release additional glucose into the bloodstream. A study from the British Journal of Nutrition monitored continuous glucose readings in healthy adults and discovered that consuming caffeinated coffee in the early morning before eating led to an average increase of 29 milligrams per deciliter in blood glucose compared to mornings without coffee intake. In individuals with insulin resistance, the rise was even more pronounced. At this point, no food has been consumed. Blood sugar is already elevated due to the dawn phenomenon. Adding caffeine on top intensifies this response even further. This is why many older adults feel confused when their fasting glucose readings are high in the morning, even though their evening meals were carefully controlled. The issue is often not dinner from the night before. It is the timing of morning coffee, especially when consumed on an empty stomach. Mistake number 2 involves sweetened additions. In Walter's case, this meant 1 full teaspoon of sugar in each cup, and on weekends, a small amount of flavored creamer. While this may seem minor, 1 teaspoon of sugar equals approximately 4 grams of pure glucose. It enters the bloodstream rapidly because there is no fiber, fat, or protein to slow absorption. In a cup of coffee, this becomes dissolved glucose delivered directly to the digestive system. The contradiction is clear. Coffee contains chlorogenic acid, which helps slow carbohydrate breakdown and glucose absorption, but adding pure sugar overrides this effect. Chlorogenic acid can slow complex carbohydrate digestion, but it does not counteract direct glucose intake. The result is an immediate spike in blood sugar. A large-scale analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2024 reviewed dietary patterns from more than 200,000 adults. It found that plain coffee consumption was strongly linked with a lower risk of developing diabetes. However, this protective association was significantly reduced when sugar was added to coffee. Sweetened coffee showed metabolic behavior much closer to sugary drinks than to unsweetened coffee. Artificial sweeteners raise additional concerns. Compounds such as sucralose and aspartame have been studied for their impact on gut bacteria. These microorganisms play a direct role in glucose regulation. A 2022 study published in Cell reported that even short-term exposure to sucralose and saccharin altered the gut microbiome and impaired glucose responses in certain participants. While the research is still developing, the evidence suggests caution. For patients seeking the full metabolic benefit of coffee, the recommendation is to consume it without additives. If sweetness is necessary, a small amount of stevia appears to have the least negative effect on gut balance and glucose control. Mistake number 3 is late-day consumption. Walter also drank coffee in the mid-afternoon around 3 p.m., and sometimes again at 7:00 p.m. He believed it no longer affected him. However, caffeine metabolism changes with age. The half-life of caffeine in the body typically ranges between 5 and 7 hours. But in adults over 65, it often extends closer to 8 or 9 hours due to reduced liver enzyme efficiency. This means a cup at 3:00 p.m. can still leave active caffeine in the system at midnight. This becomes important for blood sugar regulation because deep slow-wave sleep is when the body restores insulin sensitivity, repairs insulin receptors, and resets metabolic function. A study in diabetes care found that even a single night of poor sleep could reduce insulin sensitivity the next day by up to 25%. Poor sleep increases cortisol levels, raises glucose, increases cravings for carbohydrates, and reduces physical activity the following day. Sleep disruption and blood sugar imbalance reinforce each other in a cycle that many older adults experience without realizing the cause. After reviewing these patterns, Walter recognized the connection. He realized the issue was not coffee itself, but how and when it was being consumed. Coffee remains metabolically beneficial when aligned with the body's natural rhythms, but disruptive when used against them. After adjustments were made, his fasting glucose decreased from 142 to 118 over 8 weeks. His A1C improved from 7.3% to 6.8%. His physician described the change as significant without any modification in medication. The updated routine is based on timing and sequencing rather than restriction. The first guideline is a delayed morning intake, ideally 45 to 90 minutes after waking. Upon waking, water should be consumed first. This allows cortisol to rise and then naturally decline within 30 to 60 minutes. After that, a small meal containing protein is recommended before coffee. This may include a boiled egg, plain Greek yogurt, a small portion of cheese, or a handful of unsalted nuts. Protein intake triggers the release of GLP-1, a hormone that improves insulin effectiveness and slows digestion. It also reduces the cortisol response triggered by caffeine, limiting excess glucose release from the liver. Since protein has minimal impact on blood sugar, it provides energy without causing spikes. After protein consumption, black coffee can be consumed. An optional addition at this stage is a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. True cinnamon, specifically Ceylon cinnamon rather than cassia, contains compounds known as type A proanthocyanidins, which can mimic insulin activity and improve glucose control. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Diabetes Science and Technology found that daily cinnamon intake reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of 10 milligrams per deciliter in individuals with type 2 diabetes. If you are still following along and finding value in this, take a moment to enter the number 1 in the comments. It indicates engagement and that you are actively receiving the information being shared. Window number 2 is the pre-meal coffee timing, approximately 20 to 30 minutes before lunch. This is referred to as a metabolic preparation window, and it is considered a highly underused method for managing post-meal blood glucose in older adults. About 20 to 30 minutes prior to the largest meal of the day, typically lunch for seniors, a small cup of plain black coffee is consumed. During this 20-minute period, chlorogenic acid and trigonelline begin to absorb into the intestinal lining. The enzyme alpha-glucosidase, responsible for breaking down carbohydrates, becomes partially inhibited. At the same time, the liver is prepared to handle incoming glucose more efficiently. When the meal is consumed afterward, it enters a metabolically prepared system. A clinical investigation conducted at the University of GE found that consuming coffee 30 minutes before a high-carbohydrate meal significantly reduced the 2-hour post-meal glucose area under the curve. This measurement reflects both the intensity and duration of blood sugar elevation, compared to situations where no coffee is consumed or coffee is taken during or after the meal. Timing is a critical factor. Coffee taken during the meal or after does not produce the same effect. The benefit is associated specifically with the pre-meal window, allowing active compounds to be present before glucose enters the bloodstream. Window number 3 is the post-exercise coffee intake. This applies when physical activity is performed, such as a 20-minute walk, light swimming, or resistance-based stretching. After exercise, there is a short period where muscles become highly responsive to glucose uptake. During and after activity, muscle cells activate glucose transporters known as GLUT4. These act as channels in the cell membrane, allowing glucose to enter without the need for insulin. This is one of the body's strongest natural mechanisms for lowering blood glucose levels. Research from the University of Bath found that consuming a moderate amount of caffeinated coffee immediately after exercise increased GLUT4 activity. This effect extended the period in which muscles could absorb glucose by approximately 30 to 45 minutes. For older adults who walk or exercise in the morning or afternoon, consuming plain coffee within 30 minutes after completing activity can enhance glucose uptake efficiency. This occurs whether insulin is present or not. The combination of physical movement and post-exercise coffee intake creates a strong glucose-regulating effect. It is simple, accessible, and requires no additional cost. Another patient case further illustrates the impact of these changes. Margaret, 69 years old, a retired librarian, sought help not because she had been diagnosed with diabetes, but because she had witnessed her husband struggle with the condition for 12 years and wanted to avoid the same outcome. Her routine included 2 cups of instant sweetened coffee, immediately after waking, no breakfast, followed by a large bowl of oatmeal with honey at around 10 in the morning. She also consumed afternoon coffee with biscuits and drank chamomile tea with sugar in the evening. Her fasting glucose level was 118. Her A1C measured 6.1%, placing her in a pre-diabetic range. 5 adjustments were introduced to her coffee and daily routine without medication changes or extreme dietary restructuring. First, instant sweetened coffee was replaced with fresh ground plain coffee. Second, morning coffee was delayed by 60 minutes and taken after consuming a boiled egg. Third, a pre-lunch coffee was introduced 25 minutes before eating. Fourth, afternoon coffee was completely removed and replaced with a 20-minute walk. Fifth, evening intake was changed to unsweetened herbal tea following the walk. After 12 weeks, her fasting glucose dropped to 98, which is within the normal range. Her A1C decreased to 5.7%. She reported improved energy levels, reduced brain fog, and deeper sleep. The improvement was achieved without medication changes, but through alignment of coffee timing and metabolic patterns. Before concluding, there is an important clarification regarding safety. All information presented is based on published clinical research. However, individual responses vary. Anyone currently taking diabetes-related medications such as metformin, insulin, or GLP-1 agonists should not modify dosage or discontinue treatment based on this information alone. Any changes should be discussed with a qualified physician. There are also specific considerations for individual health conditions. Those who experience palpitations, tremors, anxiety, or sleep disruption after coffee may be slow caffeine metabolizers due to genetic variation in the CYP1A2 enzyme. For these individuals, limiting intake to 1 cup per day or switching to high-quality decaffeinated coffee may be more appropriate. Decaf still contains chlorogenic acid and trigonelline, which provide metabolic benefits. For individuals with gastroesophageal reflux or stomach sensitivity, coffee should be consumed after food rather than before. The pre-meal strategy can be adjusted by taking coffee alongside meals instead of prior to them. For those with kidney conditions or medical restrictions, consultation with a nephrologist is recommended before making dietary changes involving coffee intake. The objective is not strict adherence to a single protocol, but adaptation based on individual response. A full summary of guidance is as follows. Avoid drinking coffee immediately after waking. Cortisol levels are already elevated. Avoid adding sugar, as it counteracts the metabolic benefits of chlorogenic acid. Avoid artificial sweeteners where possible, with stevia as a limited alternative if necessary. Avoid coffee intake after 2:00 p.m. if sleep quality is affected. Avoid relying on instant or packaged coffee when fresh ground options are available. Instead, drink water upon waking. Wait 45 to 90 minutes. Consume a small protein-based meal such as eggs, yogurt, cheese, or nuts. Then drink plain coffee, optionally with a small amount of Ceylon cinnamon. About 20 to 30 minutes before the largest meal of the day, consume a small plain coffee. If exercise is performed, take coffee within 30 minutes afterward. Limit total intake to 2 to 4 cups per day. No supplements are required. No special products are needed. No major lifestyle overhaul is necessary. The key factor is timing and consistency of an existing habit. The routine is not about creating something new, but about adjusting how something already present is used each day. These gradual adjustments, when applied consistently, can produce measurable changes in metabolic health over time. For more guidance on related topics, continue exploring structured nutrition and lifestyle strategies designed for blood sugar balance and long-term health support. Please leave your thoughts about this content in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.